Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage meeting number 7. Pursuant to Standing Orders 110 and 111, ordering council appointment of Hubert T. Lacroix to the position of President and Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC, Radio Canada, referred to the committee on November the 19th, 2007. And welcome this morning as our witness, as an individual, Hubert T. Lacroix, designate President and Chief Executive Officer, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, Radio Canada. Welcome, sir. And we look forward to your remarks here this morning, and you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. Alors, Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs, membres.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, good morning. And thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today to talk about my appointment as President and CEO of CBC Radio Canada. In a few weeks, I will begin what I think is one of the most fascinating jobs in Canada, leading one of our country's largest cultural institutions. It will be a great honor for me to take on this job. Please understand that I am very aware of its responsibilities. Radio and television, and increasingly the Internet, are today the principal vehicles of culture in our society, and certainly some of the best tools that we have to reach out to all Canadians. Among those tools, I believe that CBC Radio Canada is the most effective disseminator and promoter of Canadian culture that we have. Given all the cultural influences coming from other countries, Canadians must be able to count on a strong and independent national public broadcaster which reflects their reality and their identity.
As you can see, I've been a business lawyer for many years. I was fortunate to be exposed to and to advise some of the best business persons in Canada, people who ran multinational corporations whose activities extended way beyond the borders of our country. I've also had the privilege of acting as a director of public companies. Since my first board with Circocraft in 1984, I have sat on the board of 10 public companies in various roles. I've also led and managed a large multi-investment private holding company. At Telemedia, I oversaw the operations of 14 different companies in radio, publishing, indoor advertising, real estate, semiconductor chips, and wireless services. I've thus helped companies, both private and public, navigate through and compete successfully in rapidly changing business environments. I've seen patterns, threats, and challenges. I've moved management teams to face those threats and often see them as opportunities. I've built teams, I've led teams of individuals with great abilities. These are the skills today that I bring to our public broadcaster. Mais, Monsieur le Président, mon travail ne consistera pas.
But, Mr. Chair, my job is not to create programs. As I'm sure you are aware, Richard Stursberg and Sylvain Lafrance are responsible at CBC Radio Canada for leading very talented teams of programmers working throughout the corporation. I believe that my job is to direct and manage, to develop an environment where employees can be as creative as possible. My job is to understand the media industry, to identify new trends, to be familiar with how programming is being consumed and financed. I will also be pursuing strategic alliances and finding new sources of revenue. If I do that successfully, the corporation will have the tools and motivation to continue making programming that is relevant and compelling. Like most Canadians, I have lived my whole life with CBC Radio Canada, Every day I came back from school and watched Bobino and Bobinette. And then a few minutes of La Boîte à Surprise before my mother kicked me upstairs to do my homework. I also followed hockey religiously and got to understand and appreciate the game through the eyes and voices of Danny Gallivan, Dick Irvin, and René Le Cavalier. When I was older, the National, the Téléjournal, and Le Point became my key sources of information.
Plus tard, lorsque j'ai travaillé avec Radio-Canada pour commenter les matchs de basketball lors de 3 Jeux olympiques, et que j'ai...
Later, when I actually worked for Radio-Canada as a basketball commentator on Télévision de Radio-Canada for 3 Olympics, I came to admire the dedication of the people at this corporation.
From those who put up the sets, to the technicians in the studio, to the producers, to the people on air, everyone and all of them were always committed to excellence, to creating the best show possible, every time, all the time. I really liked that attitude. When I was deciding whether to accept this job, I met with a couple of CBC Radio-Canada senior executives and with the chairman of the board. I saw again that same incredible passion for excellence that I had seen in the studio. I've heard more of that over the past weeks as I've traveled a bit and talked with employees of the corporation. I've been listening to their views and their ideas about the challenges that lay ahead. My intention is to pursue this dialogue with employees, stakeholders, and key business leaders across the country to better understand how they view CBC Radio-Canada so that I can accomplish my mandate with maximum effectiveness and momentum. Now, I am very, very aware of your commitment to Canadian culture and your ongoing interest in CBC Radio-Canada, including your current review of its mandate. That's why I am very much looking forward to your report, which will give added substance and direction to my mandate. I'm also eager to meet with you often during my term to hear what you think of the job that we are doing. I understand also that CBC Radio-Canada is above all a creative organization. It must take risks and evolve continuously. And it has obviously a special role to play in the life of this country. But like in any other large corporation, it also has to take care of its employees, balance its budget, finance its programming, and deliver value to the Canadians. In this job, I will always ask the tough questions. Does this fit in our mandate? What are our strengths? What can we do better? Are people watching? Are people listening? Are people using our services? If so, why? If not, why not? And is what we are doing adding value to CBC Radio-Canada? J'estime donc que pour que CBC...
I believe that in order for CBC Radio-Canada to fulfill its mandate, there must be great creativity and good management. Never one at the expense of the other. Like me, you know that there are tremendous changes transforming the broadcasting environment right now. To succeed in this context, CBC Radio-Canada must continue to be creative and must employ audacious strategies. My skills, together with the tremendous talents of the management team that Robert Rabinovich brought together, and thanks to the devotion of all of the corporation's employees, we will help ensure that the national public broadcaster thrives in this new environment.
Questions that you might have.
Thank you very much for that presentation. And our first question today will come from Mr. Boulanger.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome to you, Mr. Lacroix. We're probably from the same generation, I also watched Bobino and Bominette and La Boîte à Surprise. And I was very disappointed when Radio-Canada dropped La Soirée du Hockey. But at the time, I also had the pleasure of watching Les Couche-Tard of Normand Beaulieu. My first question is, you spoke in your presentation, Mr. Lacroix, of assessing the threats and the challenges to which Radio-Canada CBC can confront. So briefly, because I have two other questions, what are those threats? The main threats or challenges that I see, and as you know, I only start on January 1st, Radio-Canada CBC is evolving in a changing business context. And there are considerations on the financial market and people that we deal with and that we have to take into account. There are possibilities to use financial assets for which Radio-Canada cannot do. I'm talking about our competitors. So we have to plan and do strategic work based on the funding we receive. The audience is changing as well in Canada. Our population is aging and is greatly diversifying. We've talked about multiculturalism quite a bit. So our programming has to adapt to how Canada is changing. So those are the two major challenges we will have to face. I didn't see the words in your presentation that I was looking for. The message seems to be the one I'm looking for, in that when you assume your functions of the President and CEO, you state a categorical support for the need to promote a public broadcaster. Am I putting words in your mouth? Or would you claim such a thing? I would not have accepted this position and began working at Radio-Canada if I did not believe in that, and I'm totally convinced by that. I believe CBC Radio-Canada plays an extremely important role. And if we dilute powers of the national broadcaster and remove potential for action, we affect the nature itself of the public broadcaster. A number of us in the Canadian Parliament believe that the idea of Canadian culture has to be protected. Do you share that point of view? Absolutely. That is part of the mandate. We need to have a relevant Canadian culture. And according to you, what means should be used to preserve Canadian culture? You know, I'm starting on January 2nd, and I'm looking forward to meeting with the management team and looking at the tools they have in place and the strategies they've developed. And I will be better able to answer your question once I've started my job. In your presentation, you also said that among the things you wanted to do was to build strategic alliances, and I quote, to find new revenue sources. Does that mean you would abandon all hope to increase current funding sources? Absolutely not. As you know, I'm very aware of the review you're doing and the presentations that were given before your committee. Of course, I will come back often to see you and talk about our projects, and I hope you will support them so that all the funding sources that are available to the corporation can be used so it can continue to play its role.
The privatization of any of the units of CBC Radio-Canada, television, radio?
It's not the mandate that I have right now. The mandate that I have is clearly to continue doing what the Act says we should be doing, compelling programming, making sure that we connect Canadians together, and that is where I'm going to start analyzing this company.
The only portion of the answer that disquiets me a little bit is that's not the mandate you currently have. If such a mandate were to be put before you, what would your reaction be?
I have.
Yeah. It's yes.
Mr. Lacroix is appearing before us under sections 110 and 111, and the focus of this meeting is to establish his qualifications. That's very clear under those two sections of the standing orders. So what Mr. Boulanger is asking the witness to do is speculate on what he might do in the future. It's a hypothetical question. It's inappropriate within the context of this hearing, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
The nature of the discussion today is to determine the mindset also, the qualifications and the mindset of the person who would be asked to preside over the single largest cultural institution in this country. So to ask, at some point, we may have to ask hypotheticals, and if he chooses not to answer, that's fine. But I don't believe that we should be precluding the members of this committee to ask such questions because they may be very important.
Right now, I think what we'll do is we'll carry on with the question. We'll stick to qualifications and those particular items. Well, I think hypothetical right now. We're in a study as far as we're putting things forward. I have not seen anything like that in our study
Mr. Chairman,
so far.
It's not hypothetical in the sense that the parliamentary secretary of the Minister of Heritage, in a minority report, has recommended, on behalf of his party at the time, privatization of CBC television. So it is, in that sense, not very hypothetical. So let me rephrase my question. How, Mr. Lacroix, do you react to the minority report presented by Mr. Abbott on behalf of the Alliance or Reform Party about the privatization of CBC television?
I'm going to rule that question out of order. I don't think anything that was any minority reports that were done previously has relevance here today. So we'll carry on to Ms. Marani.
Je ne veux pas parler maintenant pour mon temps. Je voudrais reprendre.
I want to speak now. I want to. A point of order. I believe my colleague, Mr. Bélanger, is correct. We have to understand what the witness's values are and what he believes is the mandate of the corporation. If I cannot get the opportunity to ask such questions, it makes no sense for us being here. Of course, we can talk about his resume. He has a very good CV, but we have to go beyond his resume.
And that's what we're into here is history. That's I think what we want to talk about going forward with the CBC, where we stand today, and where those questions go. So I would suggest that we talk about the qualifications of Mr. Lacroix, and we go on from there. And so, if you'd like to pose your question to Mr. Lacroix, please.
Je voudrais, Monsieur le Président, que mon temps soit compté à partir de...
Very well. I would like you to start the clock from now on. I would like to take this opportunity today, given that we are December 6th, to underscore that this is the National Day of Commemoration against violence towards women, which is a very significant event in Quebec and Canada. And I also wanted to underscore there's a second event in Quebec. It's the Grand Guignolé in the media to fight poverty. So I wanted to highlight those two major events in Quebec on December 6th. Good day, Mr. Lacroix. I would like to say that your resume is quite impressive. I thought I was a busy woman, but I believe you are an extremely busy man. My question to you is, do you intend abandoning some of your tasks and concentrate your efforts on the corporation, or will you keep your duties in addition to managing Radio-Canada? My intention, obviously, is to withdraw from my various duties at present, and which I have been doing since my appointment was announced. I will maintain my participation on two boards which have no conflict with CBC activities, and I will devote myself body and soul to the national broadcaster. Which are those two boards? There's SFK Pulp, which is a pulp and paper company, and Zarlink Semiconductor, a Canada company. My second question concerns transparency. I received information to the effect that Radio-Canada under Mr. Rabinovich When there were access to information requests, Mr. Rabinovich signed off on those requests. You know, Via Rail currently developed a transparency mechanism whereby a committee discusses such access to information request issues. Will you continue the current method at the CBC? That is, that the President himself will decide to release information or not? Or will you, as Via Rail has done, strike a committee to discuss those issues, to provide information, and therefore increase transparency at the corporation? Madam, I still do not know how those access to information requests are treated, but I will ensure that the processes that will be implemented to address those issues will be dealt with appropriately. Do you believe it should be your responsibility? Are you open to any eventuality? I will take my advice from the management team as to how best to address those issues and in the most transparent manner. Do I have some time left, Mr. Chair? With regard to dealings with employees, in the past few years, we saw there was a lot of things happen, notably the lockout. How do you see your relationship, the employer-employee relationship? Are you for dialogue? Are you for a strong relationship? What is your method? In a corporation that relies on creativity and originality, and it is obviously necessary to put the priority on our employees. We need harmonious working relationships. We need to deal with everyone's concerns. People have to want to come to work at the corporation. And any attempts we will do, we will ensure there is a creative working environment for our employees on a daily basis. Very well. Thank you, Mr. Lacroix.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations on your appointment, Mr. Lacroix, and best wishes as you take on these important responsibilities. Mr. Lacroix, I wonder, how did you come to getting this job? Did you apply? Did you see the ad in the newspaper and send in a resume? Were you headhunted? How did that happen for you?
I did not apply for this job. I got a call from a headhunter. I was asked whether I was interested. It was the second time that this headhunter actually had called me to seek out any interest that I might have for this position. That was about in June of 2007. When this headhunter came back to me a couple of times, said, "Are you sure? Are you interested? Would you like to put your name forward? We think this is a job that you would have an interest and some qualifications for." I asked a few questions, met with the headhunter. This then became, I said, yes, all right, put my name after this meeting. I then was part of a selection process, very professionally run selection process, actually, which is what I'm used to in the businesses that I've seen. The selection process was chaired by the board, by the chairman of the board of CBC Radio-Canada, went to a first interview, then went to a second interview, and after the first interview, I assume that they had a long list or a list of people that they spoke to, brought down the list to a second list, a shorter list, and then made it through the second interviews and got an offer.
Okay. Mr. Lacroix, when you talk about mandate, you've mentioned a couple of times in your opening statement and in questions. Is it do you have a formal mandate? Have you been given a formal direction? Is there a letter of mandate, sort of a mandate letter that you've been given? How formal is the mandate that you've been given as the incoming president of CBC Radio Canada?
The mandate that I know I have is not a mandate that was given to me. It's the mandate that comes directly from the Act. It's very clear. The job that I am taking on is a job where the public broadcaster informs, enlightens and entertains Canadians. And to do that, we'll put together compelling programming, and we'll use, and the Act is very clear again, and we'll use all of its resources to make sure that it's available to the greatest number of Canadians. That's the mandate that I know I am taking on January 2nd.
So no one has given you any particular directives or
Absolutely
given
none.
you a direction? Okay. Your background, I guess, is more in commercial broadcasting and then public broadcasting. You've talked a lot about the need to ensure creativity while balancing that with things, budgetary considerations, financial considerations, other considerations. Do you see a difference between the way a commercial broadcaster and a public broadcaster would face the issues of creativity and risk-taking?
A private broadcaster has luxuries that CBC Radio-Canada doesn't have. It has, and I alluded to that a few seconds ago, it has a balance sheet that it can do some things with. It can take risks that are far more encompassing, and it's like in a venture company where you have, out of 10 investments, you will have 2 investments that will bear fruit. This flexibility doesn't exist at Radio-Canada as much as, I think anyways, it exists in a private broadcaster. So, in terms of management, I can't see why it can't be as efficient in a private company context than in a public company context.
Now, at the same time, we have public broadcasters around the world that are known for their creativity, the high quality of their programming, and they function within that same kind of context. How would a public broadcaster find those luxuries that you talk about that you think commercial broadcasters have?
I think flexibility starts with being able to see funding stabilized over more than 12-month periods. I think that if you do any kind of strategic planning, it has to sit on strong financial, on des assises financières très fortes, and
Strong financial fundamentals.
Creativity flows. And I mean, obviously, creativity is at the center of what this company does every day. This is why Radio-Canada, CBC, is so good at what it does.
Now, CBC Radio-Canada, in terms of a public broadcaster, is way down at the bottom in terms of per capita contributions of the citizens of this country. Into its financial success. Is that something that you think needs to change or that concerns you?
I'm very well aware of Mr. Rabinovich and his team's numerous presentations here, and most recently again in terms of trying to help certain aspects of its mandate. The envelopes that have been requested, for example, on extending the regionalization issues. I think that is very important in what CBC Radio-Canada is trying to do. So, in all, again, trying to ensure stability in financing going forward.
And how do you see the? We're done?
Yeah, you went a little over time.
Thank you, Mr. Lacroix.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations, Mr. Lacroix, on your appointment. Now, you've had a very long and successful career, which has brought you to the place that you are now. Looking back over the last 30 years, what do you believe that your experience, what do you think that will bring to the position?
As I told you in my opening remarks, sir, in the different positions that I've held, I've actually worked with a lot of great teams, build teams, and focused my efforts on trying to help these companies strategically plan, take care of their employees, get the financing they need to be able to meet the goals that they've set. This is what I've been doing for a very, very long time, and these are the skills, I think, that I bring today.
Okay. Tell us a little bit more about the experience you've had with the CBC in the past.
In terms of?
You've worked with
Yes.
the CBC.
Oh,
tell us a little bit more about
sure.
that and how that experience went and what you learned from that about the CBC.
I was involved in basketball for a long time, and as a basketball person, was asked to be the color commentator. Went to 3 Olympic Games for the CBC as a radio, 1984, 1988, 1996. Worked for the French radio network, and then for the French radio and TV networks over that time. And as I told you, I saw. And then I was a regular collaborator on a Saturday evening sports show that La Radio Française had, which was called El Beau Sport. So that's when I told you that I saw the quality of the people in the studios and the technicians and how great they did with my stuff when I brought it in, and I thought it wasn't very good, and they just made magic with it. So I have first-hand experience in seeing how good these people are.
Now, when you first found out that you were going to get this position, what kind of feedback did you get from your friends and colleagues and family? What did they have to say about that? I'm sure they had a few viewpoints on the CBC.
What's absolutely amazing about this position is that everybody has an opinion on CBC Radio-Canada. Everyone. And I think I've received 600 or 700 emails from all sorts of friends and people, and in there's always congratulations, and you know what, here's what I think of this, and what's happening with that program, and are you going to do something with this? That's the feedback I'm getting right now.
From that feedback, what was the thing that stood out the most to you that you could share with us?
Care. People actually really care about CBC Radio-Canada, and they understand that a person with a business background who's been, grâce au de Gaspé-Beaubien, I was involved, as you know, at Télémédia, and I really found that industry fascinating. And because of that, the opportunity for me to end up in the position that I will be starting on January 2nd is absolutely awesome. And people get that. People understand that Radio-Canada, CBC Radio-Canada, has a real role to play in Canada.
All right. Now, a CEO always sees some criticism. Now tell me, how do you respond to those that are uncertain about your appointment?
I tell them that I respect those views. I've received, and it's very polarized, people have very strong views about CBC Radio-Canada. There's no gray about this. They either love the corporation and what it does, or they have issues with funding, or they have issues with the role it plays. I'm a convinced person. I'm a fan of CBC Radio-Canada, and I'm telling that to everybody that is questioning why I'm doing this.
Okay, now let me quote from your presentation. It says, "Like me, you know that there are tremendous changes transforming the broadcasting environment right now. To succeed in this context, CBC Radio-Canada must continue to be creative and must employ audacious strategies." Tell me a little bit more about how you see yourself employing audacious strategies.
Let me tell you that when I started getting involved at Télémédia on the broadcasting business, we had a radio company, and the only issues we had was trying to get market share from somebody else in the country. We didn't have to fight the internet. We didn't have to fight people downloading stuff at different times. This is a very challenging environment right now because of what the new platforms and the new technologies bring to the business environment we're in. That's the challenge.
Okay. We're pretty close, Mr. Brown, so thank you very much for that. Mr. Scott.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I would add my congratulations and best wishes, Monsieur Lacroix, in terms of your appointment. I would like to explore one reference that you made in your opening statement having to do with strategic alliances and to find new sources of revenue. And I think I'd like you to elaborate on new sources of revenue, and would you consider selling off parts of CBC as a new source of revenue?
Again, we're getting into speculation.
I
this
think
has nothing to do.
It's in his speech.
This has nothing to do with.
It's. I think on this, I think the question can be answered.
Mr. Chair, if I just
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
might elaborate on my point of order, if I can make that point. He has referred to an item in his speech that doesn't address the issue of privatizing CBC. And what you're asking him to do is comment or speculate on what he might do in the future. If you look at standing orders 110 and 111, it specifically says that the job of this committee is to examine the qualifications and competence of the appointee or nominee. So, Mr. Chair, I ask you to apply the rules that we have, the standing orders of the House of Commons, and this is a limited review of an appointee.
I'm just going to have a little chat with my clerk just for 1 second. I'm going to allow the question to stand, and I think we'll ask Mr. Lacroix to answer. And
actually, I'm very happy to be answering this question because I just want to tell you that I didn't take this job to privatize services. Okay, I took this job because it's a company that has to deliver all sorts of programming on a whole bunch of platforms. So we're not going to do this. That's not the purpose of the job that I took. My job is to clearly continue doing what we do well, maximize the efficiency, focus on programming, make sure we deliver it on all platforms that not only exist today, but that we are the technical edge of what's coming around. People look to the Radio-Canada CBC to be that. We will be that. And at the end of the day, we'll be relevant and very compelling to all Canadians.
Well, I'm reassured by that, and I thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing the question to be put so we could be reassured.
Thank you.
When you speak of new sources of revenue, that not being one, what were you thinking of when you included this in your presentation? What kinds of sources of revenue, new sources?
New sources of revenues for me involve any strategic alliance, and that's why it's the same sentence or just about, that would allow CBC through a partnership or through a different way of doing things, maximizing the quality of its assets, maximizing the alliances that it has to make sure that it increases its cash flow, to make sure that it can be plowed back into programming. So I look forward to sitting down with the management team, look forward to sitting down with Mme. Charbonneau, who's a great CFO. I have the pleasure to meet her, and that's where we're going.
And generally, the witnesses who appeared before the committee when we were undertaking the review identified a significant funding shortfall, and it came up on new media, it came up on regional programming, it came up on more drama, particularly English drama. Would you see as a possible source of revenue an increase in the appropriation from the Government of Canada?
You've seen the management team of CBC Radio-Canada in front of you many times. They, I think, Mr. Rabinovich's first concern was making sure the management of this company was something everybody would be proud of once the House is in order, which I understand it is now. Coming back here, sharing some of the concerns that we have, sharing some of the issues with this committee, and making sure that you endorse some of the projects that we have is surely one of the ways to make sure we have all the revenues we need.
On the Radio-Canada side, we had a lot of interventions from Francophone communities outside of Quebec around the need for their communities to be reflected. Je viens de Nouveau-Brunswick, the population acadienne.
From New Brunswick, when we had the Acadian population.
Would you got your mind around that and the role of Radio-Canada as it relates to that particular specific series or group of communities?
Regionalization, if you read, again, if you read, I know you've read, the Broadcasting Act is a very important part of what the Act says Radio-Canada should be doing. If you look at the CBC Radio-Canada objectives as stated in its plan going 2007, 2011, it's also very clearly stated as an objective and a priority for the corporation. I know that you've received presentations on trying to increase the envelopes, the dollar envelopes for regionalization. I think you understand that this is a priority for the company, and I understand those priorities and will be supporting them strongly.
Okay, I think we've come to the end there. I gave you a little extra because we had a decision to make. Mr. Mallow, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to you, Mr. Lacroix. I believe you when you say you're not there to privatize the corporation. You're a man who sees things broadly. You're an expert in mergers and acquisitions, and you want businesses to develop, to grow in a satisfying manner and in a competitive field. And I appreciate that. I see in your resume that you love basketball, so I don't have to convince you that CBC Radio-Canada has to play an increasingly greater role in a world where obesity rates are reaching astounding levels. So the corporation has to play a more active role in promoting healthy lifestyles. You are talking to someone who has worked with Philippe de Gaspé-Beaubien and who helped to put in place Participation. I worked on the Lucé and André Chagnon Foundation, and you know his interest in obesity and people's well-being. I am convinced about that, and you are right when you characterize me as such. And now, Monsieur Lacroix, the question that kills, as we hear on the French side, will we see National Hockey League games on Saturday night on Radio-Canada? Well, I haven't assumed my positions yet, but in June, when RDS reached an agreement with the National Hockey League to broadcast Canadians' games, I understand that that's a 5-year agreement. I believe there was a competition and RDS won that competition, so I don't think you'll see hockey. I would like to see hockey, and once the contract will be up for renewal, I'm convinced that Radio-Canada will be there. But currently, there's a 5-year agreement, according to what I read in the papers. I see in your resume that, unlike your predecessor, you have management experience in the public sector. You do not have experience. Will that color the way you do things? Will you be more of have a private kind of slant to your management? And according to you, what are the significant differences between the public broadcaster and the private network? My role will be to direct the corporation, to lead it, and to ensure that the people who have the skills to create program, Mr. Stursberg, Mr. Lafrance, that those two people have the team and can do their work to deliver interesting programming. I will be responsible for strategic direction. I will support the work of the corporation's team and the programming created by that team. And that's how I will proceed. As to your question with regard to the differences between public and private sector, I don't see any difference there. It's not because you're a public corporation that you should have fewer measures. It's not because you're a public corporation that you don't have the obligation to ensure that every action you take can be accounted for. So I have no doubt that we will continue doing the work that is ongoing. But you see differences between the public and the private sector. Of course. The mandate in the Broadcasting Act suggests to Radio-Canada to do much more than in the private sector. At Telemedia, we didn't take into account the cultural issues. We had a very mercantile rationale. We wanted to add to our bottom line, and Radio-Canada does much more than that. And did you respond to those people who made the various suggestions as to how CBC Radio-Canada should operate? I personally answered all of the emails that I received and all the letters that I received. Yes. Do I comment on their suggestions? No, I will not. Are there CBC Radio-Canada employees who wrote to you? Yes, of course, to welcome me. There are a number of people at CBC Radio-Canada with whom I've worked already in the sports section, and they sent me very nice letters and welcomed me, and I greatly appreciated those letters.
Mr. Batters, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Mr. Lacroix. Congratulations on your appointment. Mr. Lacroix, you don't come into this job with a blank slate, and I'm sure you've done your homework. As someone who already has a high degree of knowledge about CBC and Radio-Canada, I'm going to ask you a few parts to this question. What problem areas, if any, have you already identified in your mind, or what issues have you already identified that you'll be looking into, ready to take action on when you assume your new role? And I guess as a corollary to that, what management techniques and experience from your past will you draw upon, or do you think you'll be relying on most when you take your new post?
Let's go with the question with respect to challenges before, and then I'll tell you how I think management techniques or what I've done before can help. A few minutes ago, somebody asked me, I think it was the first question, what are the risks that you see right now in the environment that Radio-Canada is playing in? And I think that I'll come back to those because they're very, very key. Radio-Canada is facing a consolidation in the industry. Right now, 5 or 6 basically consolidated companies, 5 or 6 families are ruling. Sorry. Wow. This could come back and haunt me. Are ruling the media and the broadcast industry. That's a fact. And they are now powerful, and they have brands that extend, and they have services that extend way beyond only one aspect of what they do. Le principe de convergence, everybody now has picked it up and is doing that. Radio-Canada also. But it doesn't have the means, the financial means to fight against these companies on a daily basis. So it has to be very strategic. It has a very big and an important mandate in the law. It has it has to provide wide services to a whole bunch of people across the country on different platforms. That's a challenge. The environment in which it plays also plays to a different public. We talked about that a few minutes ago. That's changing also. I think those are the key challenges. I'll come back to them and I'll say those again because I think they're top of mind to me right now. With respect to management techniques, I really believe in teams. I'm adding my skills to a very strong team. Robert Rabinovich did this well. People at all positions right now, and if you pardon my cliches because I'm a sports person, yes, I was affected by sports, so very deep at all positions. It's a very good management team. So I'm not doing this by myself. I'm going to work with this team, and because I've been in teams all my life and I've been a coach all my life, I think this fits well.
Excellent. I'm going to ask my question another way, and a two-part question again. What aspects specifically of the CBC and within the CBC do you hope to improve upon as the CEO? And then I'll ask you the flip side. Which of CBC's current strengths do you intend to or anticipate building on in the coming years? So I want you to focus really specifically within the organization. What aspects do you hope to, first of all, to improve upon, and then what strengths will you build upon?
I don't want to duck the question, sir, but I start on January 2nd, and I need time, I need to listen, I need to understand the organization, and I will be happy to share these and where I'm going with you the next time I have the great opportunity of sitting down with you.
You've taken on, though, a very important role in this country, and you have significant experience in this industry. I started my comments today by saying you don't come into this job with a blank slate. You must have some, maybe you're going to say you don't, but you must have some preconceived notion of the organization that you're going into and what challenges maybe exist within the organization and what strengths that you can improve upon. The pat answer, I guess, for you will be, well, I'm going to wait till I get there, but I'm going to ask you right now, before you go into that job, because that's why we're here today. Otherwise, frankly, we should have had you should be having this discussion in January. Right now, based on your thoughts and your experience, what things do you think are need improving on?
Mr. Batters, the most important thing I think I don't want to do right now is to walk into that organization with preconceived notions, because that would be a very important management mistake. I'm going to listen. I'm going to assess this corporation. I'm coming in with absolutely I'm coming in with an open mind. I have the opportunity of having no baggage, and my job will be quickly to assess this, connect my own priorities with the priorities of the company.
So right now, as we speak, sir, you don't.
Mr. Batters, you're over time now already. Maybe you can split some time in the next round.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
We now switch to Mr. Scarpellegia, please.
No. Oh, I think it's Ms. Fry, actually, is third on the list.
Thank you very much. And welcome. It's not easy to sit here with a whole bunch of people throwing questions at you. all of the time. But I wanted to focus on a couple of things that you actually did say in your presentation. You said that you do not see your job to interfere in programming, but to manage and to direct. Now, obviously, you see it as more than simply managing. You see it as directing. In order to direct, therefore, you must have a vision, yes? And so I wanted to ask you just a little bit about that vision. There are some huge challenges that we heard about that CBC faces. One is infrastructure, and that includes transmitters for the radio, CBC radio, to have a reach, as broad a reach into the regions. And that in itself ties into the second challenge, which is regionalism. How does the CBC represent the regions effectively? And to do that, that ties into your second point, which was about revenue. These all depend on each other. The ability to be regional, the ability to have that reach, the ability to face the infrastructure problems with regard to digitalization, with regard to transmitters, etc. Those all require funds. Now, my question is this. Do you see that you talked about alliances? Do you believe that alliances, which always come with a string, no alliance comes along and says, here we are, we're just going to do good. Do you see that alliances in some ways would threaten CBC's autonomy, mandate, etc.? Do you see the commercialization, further commercialization of CBC in order to give it the revenue that it needs to devalue or to enhance CBC's mandate? That's a question that you have to ask as you seek alliances and as you seek money. And finally, with regard to regionalization, how do you see that regionalization occurring with the current fiscal structure at the moment? You talked about multiculturalism, but you talked about not interfering in programming. How do you see CBC being relevant to the multicultural nature of this country without dealing with the programming aspects of it? I know there are about 3 questions I asked you in that. Thank you.
And I hope I've got them all down. If I don't, please come back to me. Business transactions, I've done them all my life. Yes, two people will not work together unless there's something in both parties' wishes to do a deal. I can't see why these transactions cannot benefit CBC Radio-Canada in the way they are structured, and I can't see why they would attack the autonomy of the public broadcaster in a situation like this. We're going to take them one at a time and see how that goes. But it is in the backdrop, something that we have to be concerned about and aware of at all times when we negotiate. No issue there. Let's go to regionalization. I understand that this is very important. It's important in what I've read so far. And remember, I'm only starting on January 2nd. So right now I'm ramping up and I'm reading a lot about the presentations that have been made in front of you. And I understand the importance of regionalization. And I understand why the envelopes that were suggested to you, the 25 million times twice, the two envelopes, 25 million, were on the table. I think it's really important to get Canadians to hear and to listen to CBC Radio-Canada as quickly as possible. Priority in the current management team, priority that I will make mine. You talked about commercialization and sources of revenue and trying to make sure that we have, or how will I make sure that we have all of the dollars that we need? And why? Yes, while maintaining the mandate. Well, it's a question of choices and it's a question of priorities. It's something that every single business company has on a daily basis because, I mean, they don't have limitless funds. So right now what you're looking at is the choices within the framework of the funding. This is what Radio-Canada has right now. And when I said that I'm not going to interfere in programming, I mean, programming is one of the direct reports that come up to the President and CEO. So obviously, I will listen, I will hear, and I will intervene. Remember, I'm one of 32 million Canadians that has something to say about programming.
There are 2 components you didn't quite answer. The first one was, did you see commercialization or further commercialization as enhancing or, in fact, devaluing CBC's mandate? And the second one is your vision. Because to direct, you have to have a vision.
I have a vision. I have a vision, very strong, and maybe I didn't hint at that as strongly as I thought I had at the beginning. Let me give you the vision again. I took this job because I really think that CBC Radio-Canada plays a role in the life of Canadians on a daily basis. Played a role in my life. And I told you, these stories about Bobino and Bobinette, I mean, this is how culture starts. I mean, these are the experiences that I lived as a Canadian, and this is how I became what I am today, 52 years later, of exposure to different things, to music, to books, I mean, this is what culture is all about. And what CBC Radio-Canada is the conduit that allows, and the forum that allows all Canadians to be exposed to this and to enrich, and I believe this, and you've heard this from my predecessors in front of this committee, enriching democratic and the culture life, and the culture of all Canadians. I believe that. That's why I took this job. That's my vision.
Thank you for that. We'll move now to Mr. Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Lacroix, for appearing before us. It's very clear from the testimony we've heard so far that you're well on your way to preparing yourself for this very important post, and I welcome you to this very important Canadian institution. Getting back to the whole issue of qualifications and what you've done to make yourself ready for this job, have you had a chance to familiarize yourself with the current culture and direction within CBC?
In terms of business culture, is that your question?
Not necessarily business, more the creative culture and also the direction that the current creative culture within CBC is moving in.
All right. I understand that question. I've had the pleasure of meeting Sylvain Lafrance. I've had the pleasure of sitting down so far with Richard Stursberg. We've done a couple of times, a couple of debriefs. We're starting that. Remember, I'm kind of cheating because right now I'm still doing or supposed to be doing what I'm doing as a person, not as a CBC person yet. So I'm giving as much time as I can to that. I had the pleasure yesterday of sitting down with the executive director of the English radio services, Jennifer McGuire, who just blew me away with her intensity and her vision. I think this is what I'm doing right now. So the culture of the place, the creative people, where they want to go, they are starting. I mean, I'm starting to meet them as I go.
Well, it's good to hear. In terms of what opportunities are out there in the world that we can learn from and apply here in Canada, have you had your chance to familiarize yourself with some of the other public broadcasters around the world, such as BBC, PBS? And are you prepared to take those experiences into account in building a stronger CBC?
Absolutely. And I know that CBC, Radio-Canada, and its management team have been looking at best practices, and I believe, because this is what we do in private practice and this is what we do in private companies, we look at best practices, we compare, we benchmark with other companies. I know they've looked at the BBC. They're in-depth reports that have been made as we reflect on what the other great broadcasters in the world are doing, and it's something that we absolutely have to take into consideration when we develop our own vision and our own products.
Right. Now, you're well aware of the fact that we're undertaking a CBC mandate review. It's actually a review of a public broadcaster in Canada, and we've heard from many, many witnesses across Canada. Perhaps one of the most critical witnesses will be you. I'm not sure you're yet in a position to be able to appear as the head of CBC, as the president of CBC, with respect to that review, but I'm wondering at what point in the process, or how long will it take for you to be in your position and familiarize yourself with what's going on at CBC right now, that you'll be able to appear before this committee and provide the kind of input that I think all of us are looking forward to receiving?
The only answer that I can give you to this very important question is as quickly as possible.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sixay.
Thank you. Mr. Lacroix, in your opening statement, you talked about the need to dialogue with stakeholders, and I know that you've already told us you've had 600 or 700 stakeholders already contact you, and so you're already developing a mailing list, I suspect, there, or an email list anyway. But can you tell us how you see the president of the CBC consulting with or having a dialogue with stakeholders? What would that look like to you as you work your way into this position, or as you do the job?
As we do in any other private company situation, stakeholders who have a lot to say and who are impacted by the activities of a company. We sit down with them, we share views, we listen to what they say, and obviously in an environment that is as important and as a fishbowl environment as CBC Radio-Canada is, with a number of players interested and impacted by CBC Radio-Canada, this is something we have to do. Now, I just want to go back to the 600 or 700 people that wrote me. All of them were friends or people that I knew. Developing a mailing list, they were already on my mailing list.
Yeah, I understand that. Do you see that as a formal process or more of an informal process?
It's an informal process, but some of these stakeholders, I mean, I will want to sit down with because they are key to CBC evolving and moving on in the environment that it is in. I mean, we will seek them out. I know they're going to seek me out, so we are going to look forward to these dialogues. It has to be open.
Do you see a need for any kind of a formal advisory panel or advisory committees or, you know, that kind of advisory mechanism? Is that something that you see as useful in this kind of setting?
I'll look at that when I come in, sir, to the position. I'll see how best I can tap the resources around us and make sure that we understand, or I understand also, the environment in which I play.
You also mentioned a dialogue with employees of the CBC. Do you see that as happening in a different way, or how do you see that that particular aspect?
Starting now, and trying to meet as many people as I can, sitting down with people from, I mean, all over our organization. I'm going to obviously be traveling the country because the reality is not, I mean, it's not going to be Montreal-centric. It's going to be across the country. So I need to understand what our employees right now are thinking.
See that as having any kind of formality to it, or again, is it sort of an informal process as you work your way into the job?
Well, I just want to make sure that the employees feel very free about the conversation that we're going to have. So it's going to take different formats. Perhaps sometimes it'll be informal, sometimes it'll be more formal.
I wonder if you could comment a little on your sense of where audience share figures in decision making around the success of programming. I think that comes up quite regularly, and how do you see that issue?
It's a very important question because you've heard many times from my predecessors, or my predecessor, and the team that's in place, the famous sentence, can't have a public broadcaster without a public. And I believe that. It is absolutely one of the benchmarks, one of the measurements. Right now, you saw probably on Tuesday how well CBC Radio-Canada on the radio side did in all of the ratings. So that's a measurement. It's one of many, but it's a really important one.
Mr. Stursberg recently was commenting on elitism and the broadest possible offer, I think was the phrase he put it, and the sort of I don't know, dialogue between those two concepts. How do you see that issue, and have you had discussions with him about that yet? I suspect you have.
We have. Mr. Stursberg is a person with great vision, and I really look forward to working with Richard. The Act gives or asks CBC to have a wide range of programs, and it says that the CBC should take these programs and deliver them on the most efficient ways to the greatest number of Canadians. That's where we start from. And when we talk about culture, it talks about making sure that we give Canadians the broadest array of smart, compelling Canadian programming. That's what we're going to try to do.
You also mentioned the word democratic in your discussion about what CBC Radio-Canada should be about. Can you, and I know Monsieur Lafrance has also talked to us about that, can you expand a little bit on what you think, what's the democratic mandate of the CBC Radio-Canada?
I think it's a very important one. I think that a public broadcaster is not a state broadcaster. The public broadcaster goes out, puts information in different platforms again, and allows us Canadians to understand the situation and the issue at hand in the best possible way, the most independent way, so that we can all make up our minds on that particular matter and formulate an opinion. And the substance behind the opinion is what CBC Radio-Canada is all about.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Now we switch to Mr. Scarpaleggia.
Mr. Chair, congratulations, Mr. Lacroix. I guess since many of the questions that I had in mind have been touched on in some way, I'll just follow up on some of the questions my colleagues asked. In terms of your appointment, you were, just to follow up on Mr. Sixay's first question, you were contacted by a headhunter, is that it?
Yes, sir, it was.
Who was that?
The firm, Egon Zehnder. They were in charge of the search firm that was in charge of the process.
Who was is there a principal?
There were two people at Egon Zehnder. If you want the names, I'll be happy to provide them.
I think that it's a process that has been followed, and I think I just as soon not go to who the headhunter was. I think that's getting out of our range here.
Well, you know, Mr. Chair, in all due respect, and I don't impugn your integrity whatsoever, Mr. Lacroix. I'm just asking you the question. I sat on many committees when I was on the government side, and you know, the opposition asked. You know, I think that if there was a hint that the person had voted Liberal in an election, you know, they were pounced on, and that's not what I'm asking at all. I'm just curious as to, I mean, there were media reports as to who the headhunter was, and I just for the record, that's all.
You want the name of the person? And I will tell you that I don't remember the name of the lady, Joanne something, and she will forever be upset with me because I forgot her name.
Well, it's okay.
And,
I don't need
Robert Swidler was the principal that ran the file.
Okay, so it wasn't Mr. Tom Long? It was,
nope.
Okay.
Nope.
I heard a lot of you know, you mentioned a lot of terms like sound financial management, the importance of competition, the importance of creativity, and so on. And these are all to some extent buzzwords, and you know, I'm sure you said that the people at Radio-Canada, at CBC, are extremely creative and competent, but I would imagine you would have thought the same of the people at Télémédia and the people at Transcontinental and so on. Could you elaborate a bit on the difference between in terms of vision, in terms of corporate culture, between companies like private sector companies that focus on market share almost exclusively and CBC? And again, going back to a point someone else raised, you say you're going to apply the private sector business practices and models and so on and criteria to the CBC, but then, and I'm glad you went in this direction afterwards, you talked about, when you spoke of your vision, you talked about how the CBC is different. It has a mandate to present, you know, alternative points of view, I think you said. So how are you going to grapple with that contradiction? Because, you know, the CBC, yes, it has to be run like a good business, but you know, it's not a business. It's a public broadcaster. It's a vehicle of democracy. And so how are you going to manage that tension?
The management side and the techniques and the way that I manage either people, companies, P&Ls, profit and loss statements, whatever else, I mean, they are mine in terms of having been acquired. These skills have been acquired over 30 years. Now, I am sure that the last thing this committee wants to hear is that our public broadcaster is not well managed. So we're going to continue doing this on a regular basis. Now, yes, there are buzzwords, but that's the first thing. And the questions, the 5 questions that I listed to you in my opening remarks are questions that I come into any business situations and ask. I ask of the management team, whether it was a Télémédia, whether it was one of the business units. That's the way we move.
No, I appreciate that, and I guess the only thing that makes me a little uncomfortable is that you talk a lot about competition and sports and your love of sports, and I haven't heard you speak much about a passion for culture. And if you know, one looks at your biography, it's very impressive. I mean, you know, you're obviously a very successful individual. You sit on many boards, but there's a lot of reference to sports and so on, which is great. But for example, when Mr. Rabinovich would come here, he would speak about specific programs and how excited he was about a specific drama series and so on and so forth. And I haven't heard that. I've heard about sports and competition and flexibility, and these are all good concepts. But I'd like to go on to another question.
You can't. Time's up.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
And the last question is going to be split. It's going to be split. One short question from Mr. Fast and one short question from Ms. Morani. We can go another round. Then what we'll do then is we'll have a short question from Mr. Fast, and then we won't split the time. We'll go for one more round. Yeah.
You do the turn and you forget the...
Yeah, only thing is that Mr. Fast has the first shot because it's the fourth round. It's Mr. Scarpaleggia, then Mr. Fast.
Get us.
Not forgetting you.
Yeah. I asked a question,
no.
he asked, and you forget us for the 3 and 4 turns.
We're going to do one more round, and you won't be forgotten. We go back to the first round. The way it goes, there's 4, 3, 3. You have not been forgotten. Mr. Fast, if you'd like to ask your question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lacroix, one of the things we heard loud and clear from the witnesses that appeared before us in the public broadcaster review that we've almost completed is the fact that Canada may be lagging behind in the transition from analog to digital. Another thing we heard was that CBC faces challenges trying to adapt to all of the new technologies that are now being presented and the costs of doing that. Have you had a chance to familiarize yourself with that challenge? And have you formulated any thoughts on how those challenges might be met?
The answer is not yet, sir. The details of those issues I am not aware of. I read, like you, the presentation so far that the CBC has made here. I understand that there is an important cost and an important expense relating to those changes. I know that's an issue. I look forward to sitting down with our team and being briefed on that.
All right. Then I could ask another question, which again relates to that same study. We heard time and time again from the regions and witnesses representing different regions of our country that their voices were not being heard clearly enough. Is that something that you've heard as you've consulted in the process leading up to your appointment?
The people that I've met so far are very aware that regionalization and regionalism is an important issue for all at this point in time. I'm sure that's why they came to this committee and said, you know what, we would like to expand and cover some parts of Ontario. We'd like to cover other parts of the country right now which are not, and this is the request we have made for extra funds. So I know that it's really top of mind for these people.
I'm encouraged to hear about your qualifications, especially in the private sector. I think I'm going to echo many of the other comments around this table that you bring a wealth of experience. You're highly qualified based on what we've seen and heard so far. My question is, most of that experience has been in the private sector, and that's going to enable you to bring a fresh look, fresh perspective to CBC. But it's also going to present some challenges because you're coming into a public broadcaster where some of the challenges are different than those you had to meet in the private sector. What strategies would you consider to adapt to this new environment that you're going to be in?
I understand that this is a different environment in terms of culture. And I want to come back to culture if I can. Because culture is not something, and this was an issue that was raised a few seconds ago. Yes, I have a sports background. But that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy the opera. That doesn't mean that I don't enjoy arts, that I don't read, and that I don't do more. Culture for me is all of these experiences together. It can't be narrowly defined, and that's what Radio-Canada, for I understand CBC Radio-Canada, does not do. It's not narrowly defining culture. I mean, we have political culture, we have a business culture, we have immigrant culture. I mean, culture is more than simply one strat of the society. That's why CBC Radio-Canada plays a very important role in bringing all of these cultures into the same spot, and to make sure that we as Canadians, I mean, we look at this and we can weave this into a single Canadian identity. This is what culture is all about. So, I mean, in some ways, when I look at the challenges that I have, this is why I want to come in and listen. This is what I want to understand. I want to understand the culture in which I'm working, and I want to understand what culture means to CBC Radio-Canada on a daily basis, so that my skills can actually be well used. I'm not going to come in with a revolution in mind until such time, or I mean, I need to understand the environment I'm in before I can start managing it.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, and we do have some time, but we can't go past 10 to 1, but so we have time for one more round, just like the first round, and we can start with Mr. Belanger. 5 minutes, sir.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur Lacroix,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lacroix, I would like to come back to something you said earlier. We can't be Montreal-centric, and I agree with that. And I would like to come back to something Mr. Scott mentioned earlier. At one time, there was an attitude by the French public that outside of Montreal, well, there was nothing. And I believe efforts have been done in recent years at Radio-Canada to try to change that attitude, to make progress. When you will assume your position on January 2nd, will one of your consideration be to embark on a Canadian tour, you yourself, to go and travel across Canada to listen to the various concerns of both Anglophone and Francophone groups across Canada? Is that something you would consider doing? I will assure you, Mr. Belanger, that one of the first things I will do will be to meet people of the corporation and outside of Montreal and Toronto and Vancouver. And these are the 3 cities I've been able to visit so far. Of course, I cannot form an opinion of the challenges facing CBC Radio-Canada without understanding regional issues and issues raised in the regions. I encourage you to do so. As for advertising revenue and how this it comes into your greater vision, I've noted in your responses that for you, the mandate of the public broadcaster extends market share. Of course, you need to have an audience. So in this bipolar universe where there's on one hand market share and on the other your audience, there's a balance you have to find. What will the importance of advertising revenue play in your greater scheme of things? Well, as you know, I'm only starting on January 2nd, but this is my understanding, or my reading so far of the situation. The corporation's funding sources are advertising revenue, and that is one significant component. We have to continue to ensure those sources are sustainable. We have to try to increase them by creating strategic alliances. And we have to maximize the efforts so that those additional revenues can help us do strategic planning over more than 12 months. But don't you fear that the attempt to increase advertising revenue will have to, the corporation will therefore have to concentrate more on audience share. I understand that advertising revenue is based on audience ratings. Yes, of course, this is an ongoing challenge. We have to balance advertising revenue, ratings, while ensuring we meet the corporation's mandate under the Act. I can tell you that this will be a significant challenge for me to understand, of course, from day one. Perhaps we can set a meeting with the committee or outside of it, so that once you've gathered some experience at the corporation, that you come back and speak to us about that challenge. I agree with you. Last question. You have a telecommunication experience. There's been deregulation in the telecommunication service. Do you think that a deregulation in the broadcasting system would be a positive thing? Well, that is something that you as parliamentarians will have to deal with. I believe that makes it even more relevant for a public broadcaster to be independent and to offer services across Canada. And so with all the market pressures on, there are issues that extend beyond my own personal vision. So that's something for the government to deal with. I want to thank you, Mr. Lacroix, and I wish you all the best in your new position. Thank you.
Ms. Morani, please.
Mr. Chair, a simple point of clarification. When you indicate there would be an increase in advertising revenue, does that mean there will be more ads? Will people have to watch more advertising on television? No, that is not our primary objective. Does that entail that? No, not at all. I have two questions that are related. You know, there's an overall budget for the corporation. CBC has its share. Radio-Canada has its own share. What I found was that Radio-Canada got less than the CBC. And the CBC has fewer viewers than Radio-Canada. So people outside Quebec tend to watch more American programs than in Quebec. Do you believe budgets should be established based on ratings? Given that Radio-Canada has better ratings, it should receive more money. And on the other hand, I presume you already know that the government of Canada has recognized that Quebec was a nation. I'm sure you also know that in Quebec we don't talk about multiculturalism, but interculturalism. We don't talk about bilingualism, but of the French fact. Could you consider taking into account Quebec's specificity, and that Radio-Canada is not only listened to in Quebec, but also Francophone communities outside of Quebec? Do you believe it is important for Radio-Canada to put in action the fact that Quebec is a nation and distinct from Canada?
I don't think that's the term that was used, and I think Quebecois is a nation within a united Canada. So let's have that corrected.
Bien sûr. Dans un Canada union.
Yes, of course, in a united Canada. We play with words here, you'll find. Yes, the question is, in the programming, for instance, will you take into account Quebec's specificity of the French fact? and of the Quebecois nation? Will multiculturalism be put aside, given that Quebecers do not believe in multiculturalism? Will that distinction with regard to Quebec's identity be put forward, be reflected in the programming? Your question was how we split the pot. I don't have yet any details with regard to the budget. I'm going to have to meet the management team. I understand one thing, however. I understand that Radio-Canada broadcasts in French and CBC broadcasts in English, but it's a single corporation. The network recognizes that the issues are similar, but the way we deliver our services and products is different, because one is in French and the other is in English. I shall see, starting in January, how money is used, how it is allocated, and we will respect the management team's priorities.
Pour l'autre question?
As to the other question, with regard to taking into account the Quebecois nation and that Quebecers are different. Now, do we recognize that Quebecers are different? Well, obviously, the Quebecers speak French, and Radio-Canada broadcasts in French. But as for multiculturalism, for instance, well, Radio-Canada also does things in other languages, on other platforms, and will continue to do so while I'm president and CEO. So my understanding is that Radio-Canada will continue to reflect multiculturalism. What I'm telling you is that Radio-Canada has a clear mandate and will continue to meet its mandate.
Thank you, Chair. Monsieur Lacroix, where is Radio-Canada International in your sense of the CBC Radio-Canada generally? Do you see an ongoing mandate for Radio-Canada International? Is it a key part of the broadcaster?
Another very important platform right now that's being used. Again, I look forward to getting the details of all the services that we provide, and Radio-Canada International is surely one of them.
New media. Do you have any particular experience in new media? I know it's something that often eludes me. Are you a consumer of it? What's your sense of the challenges and possibilities with new media for CBC Radio-Canada?
New media is for everybody involved. For example, Transcontinental, one of the boards that I sit on, we have a media company. The web, how to connect and how to bring people to use its services. As you know, there are nearly 3 million people that go to cbc.ca and 1.7 million people that go to radiocanada.ca. I mean, those are really, we have to acknowledge that on a monthly basis. That's an incredible number of people. If the private companies that I'm involved in had this kind of traffic on their website, they would be applauding on a daily basis. So yes, sir, it's very important. All sorts of business models have been tried. This is something that is going to be very, very important in what I do starting January 2nd.
Mr. Lacroix, Madame Mourani touched on one of the challenges of English Canadian TV, which is that, and I think Mr. Stursberg put it to us, that English Canadians were alone among Western industrialized nations in preferring television content produced in a foreign country, and that presented a pretty significant challenge for CBC Radio-Canada. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you see that particular challenge?
I understand that well. I think it's a big challenge. When we talked about challenges today, I told you about funding. I told you about the business environment. Another important challenge is to ensure that in prime time, high-quality Canadian TV content gets massively distributed to Canadians. That's a big issue. I think Richard and his team are doing a very good job at that. A few minutes ago, a gentleman on this side of the table said, "Why we haven't heard you talk about shows yet?" And the answer is, I really look forward, as January 2nd turns around, to be able to tell you about the shows with the same passion that Robert Rabinovich did, because you saw there was a very important launch a few weeks ago, or a few days ago actually, big show coming up, The Border. Now, everybody's really excited about The Border. Let's see what that gives. High quality Canadian content in prime time.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Fast.
Two questions and a quick comment. First of all, have you met with Mr. Rabinovich?
Yes, Robert Rabinovich has been incredibly generous with his time in this transition period. Only great things to say about that.
All right. Second question. When your appointment was made public, there was criticism from some quarters, and I believe the gist of the criticism was that you weren't an insider, that you were coming from the outside. Now, I think I've already shared my view on that. If you could respond to that criticism.
Can't do much about that criticism. I'm an outsider. I come in from the private sector. You've seen what I've done before in my life. I've never worked in a public crown corporation. But again, I think that's adding to the skills of a team that has been there and has worked within CBC for a little while now.
Well, I fully expect a very fresh approach. Now, my comment is this. A former member of this committee, Charlie Angus, who used to sit where Mr. Sixay presently sits, consistently raised the issue of some of the archival material that CBC has available, and that just isn't getting out there to the public. And I would simply request that you have a look at that, do whatever you can to make this archival material available, especially online, but also on other digital media that are now becoming available. So I wanted to thank you for appearing.
Just wrote it down. Thank you for the comment.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate everyone's concerns, good questions, and thank you very much, sir, for your good answers. I think you were very candid and open with us here today. Just one thing before we recess, just for a little short time, because we will want to bring a motion forward. I have to relay, when we were, our committee was in Yellowknife, and we had a town hall meeting in the legislature, and we went through the various delegations and people that were on the order paper, and I think we were 2.5 hours or almost 3 hours, and what I did was open it up to the rest of the people that had been in the hall that evening. And there was a gentleman at the back who had not participated in the events that evening, but he made one statement. He stood up, and why I'm bringing this up, in your presentation, it says, when I was older, I became my key, or the National and the Telejournal and Le Point became my key sources of information. And then later on, Ross Porter introduced me to jazz. This particular gentleman at the back said he wanted to portray, he didn't like jazz, the 2 hours. But I have to say that I fully love the broad perspective that CBC does have. And I think that those that like jazz, it's great. But I had to get that gentleman's word forward, and to say that I'm quite sure that was the only thing in CBC that he didn't like, the 2 hours that was jazz time.
So if I had Mr. Chairman, an email from him, he would have said, thank you very much. And by the way, can you do something about the jazz?
Yes. Okay. So thank you very much for appearing today, and we will. Yes, Mr. Belanger.
Before you recess, the clerk has given me a copy of a motion. I'd be prepared to move that motion.
Okay, then before we recess, it's moved by Mr. Belanger that the committee has examined the qualifications and competence of Hubert T. Lacroix as President and Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC, Radio-Canada, and finds him competent to perform the duties of the position he has been appointed, and that the Chair report to the House. All in favor of that motion? Against? Okay. Carried unanimously. Oh, excuse me?
Just quickly, Mr. Chair, just an item that I can't recall if we had discussed in public. I know we're all in agreement. This is a non-partisan issue. but I wanted to get on the record in public that with Mr. Talegdi's bill 310, which has to do with the half-masting of flags, that I believe we had a discussion that it probably would be ideal if the committee at some point could take a look into it and give some advice relative to that question. Mr. Talegdi's bill is coming up in private members' business. It is to do with half-masting, and I think that we had a very brief discussion. It would not, at this particular point, because obviously there will have to be debate, the 2 hours of debate, it would then be referred to us. But the point is that it is something that, God forbid something happens, that it becomes a point of contention. And I just know that I believe our discussion was that as committee members, we saw a value to try and get a handle on that particular issue.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the comments by Mr. Abbott, but I think it would be appropriate for us to wait for the bill to be referred to committee, which hasn't happened yet. Thanks for the heads up, and we certainly will consider that should it be referred to us.
Okay, I know it's, I think it's under our mandate, so we can look into that. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you again, sir, for your great presentation.
Thank you for your questions.
And good luck, sir.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.